First, I just wanted to thank you all for my nice birthday card,
Oh,
and
sorry.
appreciate that.
Before we
Really?
begin the agenda, the
sorry.
Wichita-Sedgwick County Metropolitan Area Planning Commission would like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to this public hearing. Copies of the agenda for today's meeting, the public hearing procedure, and Planning Department staff reports on all agenda items are available on the counter in the lobby of this conference room. The Planning Commission's bylaws limit the applicant on a zoning or subdivision application and his or her representative to a total of 10 minutes of speaking time at the start of the hearing on that item, plus up to 2 minutes at the conclusion of that hearing. All other persons wishing to speak on agenda items are limited to 3 minutes per person. However, if they feel that it is needed and justified, the Commission may extend these times by a majority vote. All speakers are requested to state his or her name and address for the record when beginning to speak. When you are finished speaking, please write your name, address, and the case number on the sheet provided in the lobby. This will enable staff to notify you if there are any additional proceedings concerning that item.
For the engineer.
Please note that all written and visual materials you present to the Commission will be retained by the Secretary as part of the official record. If you are not speaking, but you wish to be notified about future proceedings on a particular case, please sign in on that same sheet. The Planning Commission is interested in hearing the views of all persons who wish to express themselves on the agenda items. However, we ask that all speakers please be as concise as possible and avoid long repetitions of facts or opinions which have already been stated. For your information, the Wichita City Council has adopted a policy for all city zoning items. A copy of this policy is available in the lobby. The City Council relies on a written record of the Planning Commission hearings and does not conduct their own additional public hearings on these items.
Okay, we're ready to go. First item, we have no minutes. We'll go to the subdivision committee's recommendations. Case number 27, final plat for Rocky Ford, second edition, located south of 31st Street, south on the east side of Rock Road. Do we have anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this?
Look like it.
Anyone in the commission want to hear it? Okay, we'll take that by consent. Item number 34, city vacation of a 30-foot drainage easement to increase buildable area on a parcel zone GO, general office. Anybody on the commission want to hear that? Anybody in the audience like to hear that? Okay, we can take that by consent. Item number 35, city vacation to reduce a platted 50-foot setback to a 20-foot to allow for future construction on property zone limited industrial. Anybody on the commission want to hear that one? Anybody in the audience? Seeing none, we'll take that by consent. Item number 36, city vacation of a utility easement to allow construction of a private storm sewer system on parcel zone LC. Anybody in the commission like to hear that one? Anybody in the audience?
Which one? 33, the first one. Okay.
Did he raise his hand?
Just, you skipped to that one. You started.
Oh. Okay. Okay, we'll take 3-4 by consent. Let's back up to 3-1, case number 33. City vacation of a contingent street dedication between Reese Farm Estates and Goddard Schools on property zone single-family residential. Anybody in the commission want to hear that? Anybody in the audience?
Oh, you don't want to hear it?
The applicant?
We'll take that by consent.
So we did do all
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Make a motion, we take item 2-1, 3-1, 3-2, 3-3, and 3-4.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 11-0. Okay, let's go to
Well,
the,
12 of us?
He forgot to count himself.
Well, there's three missing.
11.
7, yeah.
You can have a roll call.
Sorry about that.
Okay, let's go to public hearings. 2017-003, city conditional use for an accessory apartment in an existing house on property zone as F5. Anybody on the commission want to hear that? Anybody in the audience want to hear it? Okay, we'll take that by consent.
Well, I'd like to hear it.
You'd like to hear
Before
four?
you want to hear?
Yes.
Okay, we'll hear that one. Number 5, 2017-00034, and CUP 2017-00039. We're hearing both the zoning case and the CUP?
Yeah, at the same time.
Okay. That's the city zone change from single-family to general commercial associated with the Country Hollow North DP 338 for residential and commercial uses on 35.88. Okay. Anybody in the council commission want to hear that one? Yes, we do. So we'll hear that one. Okay, number 6, 2017-00043, city zone change from single-family 5 residential to LC limited commercial. Anybody on the commission want to hear that one? Anybody in the audience like to hear that one? Okay, we can take it by consent. Case number 7, which is 2017-00047, city zone change from SF5 single family to LI limited industrial to allow for an expansion of a trucking company. Anybody in the commission want to hear that? Anybody in the audience here to hear that? We'll take that by consent. So we have a motion on 6 and 7.
Move to approve.
Second?
Okay. Motion by Warren, seconded by Green. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Oh,
I want to abstain from voting on item 7. A friend of mine don't have a conflict of interest, but it may appear that, so I don't want to be showed voting on it.
we're voting on 6 and 7, so let's just take 6.
Let's just take 6, yeah.
And Mr. Warren?
Move
Mr.
to
Green.
approve item number
Second.
6, yeah.
Okay, any discussion on 6? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll take item 7.
Move to approve.
Second?
Warren, Mr. Green. And any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And we have one abstention, Mr. Bill Johnson. Okay, so that's 10-0-1. All right, can we hear case number 35? Is that, so we get you also, okay. Double duty today, huh?
Kathy Morgan, Planning Department. Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is an existing residential structure in College Hill, and it is located on East Second Street between North Clifton and North Roosevelt Avenue. It's the only address or only property that's addressed off East Second at that location. As you can see from the zoning map, there are other TF3 uses around it. So, and they're requesting, what they are requesting is an accessory apartment so that they can have a second residence or a separate apartment within the main structure, rather. And there's the aerial. It's kind of one of those airplane bungalows. Why is this mouse? This back half is 2 stories. The front half is just 1 story. And as you can see, it's in residential, so adding an additional opportunity for another resident in that area is according to our community investment plan. This is the property looking north at the site. It has a driveway to the east, concrete, and there's parking behind back here that would accommodate the cars. There's no on-street parking. Well, there is on-street parking on would be the south side of East Second Street. And this is looking back toward the northeast. This is the property, the tan property building. Again, this is the site in the center. And this is looking east on Second Street. Single-family residential across the street south. And this is looking west on Second Street, and the property is where the pointer is right there. And so this is not an uncommon use in the College Hill Neighborhood Association or neighborhood area. And staff would recommend that the conditional use for an accessory apartment be approved.
District Advisory Board weigh in on this?
No, the District Advisory Board is meeting November 6th.
Okay, any questions for the presenter? Bob?
Just a comment, you answered my question. We drove by there, and it didn't look like there was much parking, but I did not know there was parking behind. So
Right.
I don't have a problem.
Any other questions? John?
Curiosity, is this for actually a separate place to live where it doesn't have connection to the rest of the house?
Yes, what will happen, let me go back to, so there will be a separate entrance created back here. And I'm thinking that there already exists some kind of separation wall in there. And so they just need to put in another entrance on the building.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Kathy, just to be clear, so the parking's going to remain. There's going to be no new construction on site that uses
correct.
any of that existing parking.
That's
Any other
correct.
questions for
Thank you.
Kathy Morgan? Thank you. Anybody from the audience like to speak on this item?
The applicant, if he's here.
Okay. Is the applicant here? Would you like to say anything to the commission? Please state your name and address.
My name is Nathan Farr. I'm part of the ownership group that owns the property. There's already a separate entrance on the side there, so it's really just blocking off a door that leads down into the basement or upstairs. So that's the only construction we'll have to do.
Any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission. Oh, I'm sorry. I already asked about the public, but no one said. Anybody from the public like to speak? Thank you. Bring it back to the commission.
Move we approve as presented.
Second.
We want to get, Mr. Green made the motion, Mr. Dool seconded in tie with Mr. Warren. Whoever's name's down the least, give it to them. Okay. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, 11-0. Next item. Are you presenting that, Dale? Okay.
Dale Miller, planning staff. I'm going to try and be brief because I know the applicant has a presentation that goes into a lot of detail about the history of this particular site. So other than to reiterate that it is a zone change request to general commercial subject to a community unit plan. And as you all remember, community unit plans are able to apply use restrictions and have additional standards in terms of screening walls and building setbacks and architectural compatibility and that sort of thing. So I won't go into the details of it other than to show that right now it's zoned single family. Part of the history of this is there have been at least 3 other cases, but they were all deferred or never completed because of right-of-way issues, trying to sort out how much right-of-way was needed for the Kellogg expansion. And so they believe they've got that sorted out now and know where that boundary is and filed the application. You can see there is a subdivision that is platted and located here to the south. When we get to the aerials, you'll see that big chunks of it have been developed, but some of the area to the east has not been developed. There is an existing subdivision to the west over here. This ground has all been taken by KTA and is currently right-of-way. An aerial, I'm not sure how old this aerial is, but you can see here number of homes that have been developed in this subdivision here, and then a number of lots that are still vacant and streets that have yet to be put in. Particular note, Gilbert goes east here and then stops where this neighborhood swimming pool is. There is a creek that would have to be crossed here with some sort of a drainage structure, and then it goes on and will connect up with East Gilbert Street over here in this other subdivision located to the east. At the 2nd District Advisory Board, there was quite a bit of discussion about when this street would be completed, whether it was needed, and that sort of thing. And I'll let that kind of develop as it may come out with the neighborhood's testimony. But additional subdivision here, and as you can see, all of this area up here is interchange area and will be changing over the years. Comprehensive plan shows this is appropriate for new residential. This is the, as I understand it, the approved layout that ultimately will be built. And what I wanted to show here is 127th will ultimately go north and then swing to the west, cross over KTA, and then get to Zelda. And then I don't remember whether they're going under or over, but somehow you get across Kellogg and then go west in order to go west. My understanding is here the red stuff is all planned but is not funded at this particular point in time. My understanding is that this segment is funded but may not be finished until 2021, I believe, is the time frame. There's the CUP. Initially, this segment here, they were proposing to put multifamily 18 zoning in here. At the 1st District Advisory Board meeting, there was a lot of discussion about that. The applicants then had a neighborhood meeting with, 6 or 8 representatives from various factions and agreed to eliminate the request for MF18 along here. And originally, this tract was going to have frontage on Gilbert. They've now agreed to wall this all off on the north side of Gilbert. This would be a wrought iron fence or something similar to that. It wouldn't be a masonry wall. Then masonry wall over to this pond area. The pond area would have a gate so that the neighbors can go through and fish there. And then the wall would finish off. Apparently the neighbors Kids fish there a lot, and they felt like that was a recreational opportunity that they'd like to preserve. The developers were more than happy to try and figure out a way to make that work. As you can see here, the main service road for these lots now is to come off this cul-de-sac of Orm Circle and be accessed through this private drive to that point. And then you can see here, over here, where 127th would then curve west and go over to Zelta. Also, as a result of that meeting, they added to the list of prohibited uses. I think there's something like 30 uses that they have put on here that they're specifically going to give up on. And then this is looking at the site from Gilbert. And that's looking at the neighborhood to the west side of 127th. A little bit southwest of the application area. Northwest from the site. This is looking south at some of the existing homes in the Country Hollow neighborhood. More homes. This is further to the east, kind of the eastern edge of the developed area. A berm that is right next, right over here. That shows up. Yeah, right over here would be 127th, and then this is the entrance to the subdivision, and they have a berm with some landscaping here, and then if this is approved, there would also be the screening wall that would go along here. This is the end of Gilbert as it is now, and over here is the swimming pool area. There's the swimming pool. And with that, I'd try and answer questions or turn it over to the applicant.
Questions for the presenter? Yes, Mr. Warren.
This is for my own edification. On the prohibited list, there's a reverse vending machine. What is a reverse vending machine?
There for a while, they had machines that if you had like, tin cans or aluminum cans that you wanted to turn back in, you could take them to the machine, dump them in, the machine would weigh them and give you money for it. Nobody's doing that now, but it's left over.
One I'd never heard of before, so thank you.
Mr. Richardson.
Dale, so what it says on the drawing about parcel 5 is not correct now. It says any uses allowed within multifamily 18, and that's not going to be the case now. Is that right?
Well, they did leave multifamily use as a permitted use.
I see.
They're just not going to have that MF18 parcel that had frontage directly onto Gilbert.
So no access onto Gilbert then?
Yes.
Okay, so that, from that standpoint, the drawing would have to be corrected as well, because it doesn't show any access control. But we can ask the applicant about that.
Yeah.
I think
The only
control,
access.
yeah, needs to be updated on the drawing.
Get over to the only access that they were proposing from Gilbert is here on the far east is emergency only. Everything else would be walled off or fenced off all the way through.
We probably should reflect that on the drawing, and I realize it's kind of been dynamic here, so. been some
Any other
change.
questions for the presenter? Seeing none, Dale, I had a question for you. At the end of the day, after all the concessions were made, what was the final vote on the DAB?
DAB approved 7-1 at the second hearing.
Thank you. Okay, no more questions. We will have. Oh, well.
Applicant's got to make his presentation.
Yeah, the applicant can now make a presentation. You have up 10 minutes. Mr. Lindenbach, are you going to be making it all, or is Mr. Mullen going to help you?
I think I'll handle it. I do have a little bit of a lengthy presentation, so if you would keep that in mind, if I need a little bit more time, I'd hope that you could grant me just a bit more. There's a bit of a history lesson here as I get back to the start of the case, so that's why I'm anticipating a little more time. Sorry about this. There we go. I think I'm heading the right direction. Okay.
Now starting the clock.
Thank you. So just like to echo a couple things that Dale had mentioned. We did have a DAB meeting in September, on September 11th. There was a large showing to that meeting. There was, I think there was a neighborhood of 70 folks there. So that might be a record for me for going to a DAB meeting. And I think all those folks were there for our case. The case went, there were some lengthy discussions, and the results of that led to us having a private meeting. So it was deferred. So we had a private meeting. Sorry, I probably should say I'm Brian Lindeback, MKC Engineering, 411 North Webb Road, on behalf of the owners. Sorry, I had to cover that. So we had that meeting on a week later, on the 18th of September. We then had a handful of representatives. It was decided to have the neighborhood provide a group of constituents that could represent, so that keep the meeting down on time. But I had a good, productive meeting there, and had some changes. So subsequently, we had our DAB meeting on October 9th. Another 50 plus, I would say around 50 people were at that meeting. Much of them were not at the first meeting. So again, we've had a really good showing for this case, which it just goes to show how important this case is. So with that, I'll bring up the presentation. And like I said, I'm going to give you a bit of a history lesson. I know that you guys know, well, you may or may not know who Ritchie Development is, but they are a developer that primarily develops property here in the northeast part of town, as well as the west part of town, northwest part of town. So the red properties are properties that they develop. I bring this up because they have 40 years of experience doing this sort of work. Their business is land. You know, they do both commercial and residential. So again, I've got a couple slides here. This kind of gives you a breadth of kind of northeast quarter of the city, and these are all projects that they've worked on or are in the process of working on. Again, northwest Wichita. I've got a quick slide here. And we can go back to these if anybody wants to go through in detail, but northwest Wichita. So going back to 99, this was the current land use guide, and the developer was looking at this property with anticipation of possibly purchasing it. We worked with them and the city, and I think the state as well. There was contemplation of a kind of a southeast loop bypass, and so we reviewed that with lots of folks, and it was decided that bypass would not come through this property. So there was a CUP that was drafted. This was all general commercial. That's the color here. It represents general commercial. That was done in 2002, but it didn't ever see the light of day. MKC became involved, and this was some of those conversations. We looked at some alternatives to get that corridor through there. And if you have any questions along the way, please don't hesitate to stop me, and I'll try to answer any questions. In 2004, we prepared a preliminary plat, and this was kind of the initial work that we did to come up with some layouts and designs. It was always intended that we would have this corner as a commercial component. Often, most all the Ritchie development projects have a commercial component to them. I think on the first slide, it talked about how the rooftops generate the commercial activity. And so that's what they do typically, is they'll generate the rooftops, and then the commercial activity will come in subsequent to that. So that's been always in the plan. We did a preliminary plat in 2005. This was the general commercial parcel that we had planned on doing. And this was, we had contemplated doing MF18 here, but when we turned the plat in, we left this as just single family 5. But it was always in the idea that we maybe have maybe it's a church or possibly some sort of multifamily. But so then this was all kind of part of that. When we were running the plat through, we knew that there was important need to have a connection across Kellogg, because Kellogg is, as you probably knew if you drove this area, is a a right in and right out functionality only on 127th here. So this just shows that we had done some due diligence with the city and other parties to try to see about getting some sort of looped access. So there'd be multiple ways in and out of the development. That, of course, didn't happen because the Kellogg project was some ways down the road. This is just a drainage and utility plan that we had submitted with it, just showing different drainage basins and how we'd spent a lot of time coming up with how things were going to work out. This
What was the date on that, Brian, that last drawing?
Yeah, that was July 2005.
Okay.
So that was that went in with the preliminary plat. So a little ways back, yeah. This is a concept of what we were coming up with back in 2005, and it just so happens this is what prevailed and got built at the entryway. You may have seen it in some of Dale's photos. 2009, so we're getting closer today. There was the whole Kellogg plan. As you know, the Kellogg plan changed. But the important thing was that it was slated to complete all the way through this intersection of 127th in roughly 2012. So those preliminary plans were underway. That changed. There's a lot of dialogue going on here. So there's the configuration went through a different engineer and a different team, and they started looking at different options of how to deal with the challenges of getting full movement access over to 127th, as well as looking at how the frontage road would work across there. So this is one of many plans. And at that same time, Westar was having to try to figure out a route to get the electricity through. These numbers here and letters represent different routing paths that would take it over to a substation that was just east of 143rd, about a half mile. So those discussions were public meetings, and it went through lots of discussion. And of course, this was the red heavy line here is what the route that they ended up and chose. At that same time, there was some further ideas put forth on the layout of this. I guess it's called second phase of the Kellogg project now, but these were some ideas that were coming about at that time. In 2014, it was also we got a bit of a picture of what this could look like up there, and so this all kind of helps to explain why this property has been sitting and we haven't ever finished what we started. So to give you a little history on the takings of property or acquisition of city property for the highway project. This was, the pink here is what was for the ramps, of course. That was built with K96. Oops, this is pipeline that runs across the property. Everything in between is what we're talking about today in generality. The green here is the residential that is still going to remain as the part of the development. In 2010, as you know, there was a big housing crisis. That housing crisis trickled down to the developer, and it was a challenging time. At that time, the developer and the city struck a deal to transfer this property along with for the Kellogg project, which of course has changed since then. In 2016, they ended up and proposed acquiring more. At this point, the conversation wasn't as amenable. This is kind of cutting into the bone, if you will, of the property, and it became a challenge from a standpoint of, well, what do we do with the rest of this property? So as you can see, time has definitely changed a lot on this property, starting with nearly a quarter section of land, and now we've got much less to work with. This is kind of looking at the sales trends over the years, and not as well as what properties have been built. So it started, of course, we started building the development in 2007. Actually, a little before that, 2006, infrastructure-wise and stuff, and then house sales, of course, came on along in 2007. As you can see, this is their current phase over here. The road doesn't show up on the aerial, but there is a road here, and these houses are selling. at a very slow rate. They've only sold 3 lots this year alone. As you can imagine, that's
Brian, your time is up.
okay.
Make a motion.
I could probably use 5 minutes.
Second.
Okay.
How much? 2 minutes.
Okay.
We have a motion and a
I
second.
got a suggestion that we see what kind of questions we have and with the willingness to extend the applicant's rebuttal time from 2
Afterwards.
minutes to 5 minutes. That way we see what kind of questions we have rather than continue, because these may not be issues at all.
Do we have, you made a motion. Who seconds his motion?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any questions to the, no,
Minutes first.
we're just going to ask questions. Or do you want to give them 2?
No.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Lindenbeck? Green.
When, this has all been a richer development, Country Hollow now going into the commercial component of this, when you're selling the roofs, if you will, do you inform the buyers of those potential residential properties that there is in fact going to be commercial adjacent and/or a part of the development?
Yeah, and I think
So that they're, kind of given a heads up.
Yeah, I think on the sales map, there's a lot of, I think this area was grayed out with future anticipated. And as far as specifics as to what was brought up at the transactions with the land sales, I think it's always their intent to share that, what their future plans are. And I think, for the most part, they do share all that, that this property up here is contingent upon change. But as you can see, we've been following a moving target, and that target, I think we've finally landed on what we think is going to be what we have to work with, and that's why we're coming before you now. I've heard at some of the DAB meetings that there was some folks didn't feel like they were properly notified as far as what could be up here, and certainly those aren't good conversations. But we've directed them to the developer to help resolve some of those issues. So,
Mr. Richardson.
Brian, a number of questions. In the discussion with the neighborhood about what happens to Gilbert Street, it sounded like there was talk of even closing Gilbert and not making it go through. Were any of those discussions? Because some of that vacant area in there it's all been platted in there. I'm correct. Is that right? I mean, you've probably got a slide that shows that. Well, I know you do. I don't know which one it was, but
sure. This section has not been constructed to date.
Right. But it is platted.
It is platted, and that was part of that original plat in 2005. And I think the discussions on that were, some of the folks in this neighborhood didn't like the idea of having through traffic, but those discussions were made in 2005, and it was decided that by both the planning staff and effectively by the owners that was an acceptable route for getting people through there. I think it's a good practice. I mean, from a practical standpoint, it's good practice to have access through development. And I think the subregs actually specify you have to have at least 2 points of access. And for the size of the development, I think it's very appropriate to have. We have one connection down here, and then the 2 connections over here. So I think it makes for a good planning for the city and for the longevity of the area.
Let's go back to the CUP itself, if we can. That's what we're here to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Give me your understanding, based on what you've agreed with the neighborhood, where the access to the property will be and where it will not be.
Okay. It might be easier if I actually switch to this next slide up here, because it helps to show in the color the area of this green area that we intend to, replat it and give it to the homeowner association at some point in time. So this green area will serve as a buffer. It was originally talked about at the neighborhood meeting, the private meeting that we had, that'd be a 10-foot buffer. So if you will, you saw some of those slides with the sidewalk. I think it's a 6-foot sidewalk, 5 or 6 foot sidewalk. So beyond that, we agreed at the time to give a 10-foot separation there. We've since talked about it with the developer, and we think that a 15-foot would be more appropriate to get some landscaping and to create that buffer. And then, of course, north of that green space is going to be a wall requirement and fencing requirement along here. So that was part of the discussion was, well, do we make a wall here across the pond, or do we make a wrought iron fence that the neighborhood can see through? And it was decided at the neighborhood private meeting that by the parties there representing that a fence would be more appropriate there, so they can see and get to that pond if they want.
But with regards to vehicular access, are you saying there's no vehicular access along Gilbert except for the emergency on the far east side? Is that my understanding now?
You got it. That's exactly right. There'll be a wall there.
Right. And then the developer owns the land to the south of that easterly green line, all
Yes.
that in there anyway, right?
Yes, he does.
Understand that. Okay.
So
But even at that, we're saying no access to Gilbert, period, except for the emergency.
Except for emergency, yeah.
Okay.
And the emergency is really just good land planning again.
No, and the fire department's going to certainly insist on that, and we'll see this at subdivision committee, but I just want to make sure I understood what you're proposing, which I think is, certainly makes a lot of sense. If you live in that neighborhood, you should be happy with that, I would think.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's the only questions I had.
Thank you, Mr. Richard.
If I could, Mr. Richardson, provide a little bit of background as well. I mean, this is going to be,
Yeah, I had one other question about that.
Yeah.
Right now, the plan under the current construction, 127th will curve to the west.
correct. This right
And
here,
it'll be two-way, right?
it's actually, yes, it's actually a three-way frontage road. So the center lane is just a,
But it'll move traffic in both directions, so
Absolutely.
you can get north to Zelta and connect to the highway. That roundabout there will not be built until those others are built. Is that?
that's
my
right. The
understanding?
roundabout comes in when it's necessary, the part that's necessary about this section here becomes a one-way frontage road.
Right. Okay.
So that ends up over at 143rd.
That's why I wanted to clarify that between 127th and Zelda will be two-way traffic. So there's a way to get people to this development is what I was
Right.
kind of concerned about. It's like,
Any
how
other
you going to get
questions from the commission at this point? Okay, would you still like to have 2 additional minutes?
Oh, maybe just a few seconds, hopefully. One thing on this,
I would grant you one
sorry.
additional minute.
One thing on this, there's a frontage road that's, conceived sometime in the future. With the acquisition of the right-of-way, the last one in actually completed in 2017 this year, this would be a no access. So that's part of the reason why we have the emergency access point there. So I thought that was important. Presumably, if there is ever access there, we wouldn't necessarily need this emergency access easement. That could probably go away. But at this point in time, that's not in the cards.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none, we'll open it up for comment for the public. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name's Tracy Binkson. I live at 14119 East Gilbert Circle. So I actually live somewhere over here. And I guess we were never informed of the commercial use. When they had the private meeting, Springdale Lakes was actually not present. Our homeowners association wasn't. Springdale Lakes Estates was. So for us, that kind of made a difference because the people that were directly affected really didn't get a say in that meeting. I guess one of the questions that a lot of us had was, what kind of commercial properties are you planning on putting there? I've heard
Dale,
apartments.
do you want to answer that, or do you want just say what's in the write-up?
Well, if the question is what specific kinds of uses, whether it's a Home Depot or, a hotel or what, at both district advisory board meetings, the applicant has indicated they don't have anybody in mind because it is so long out in the future when the transportation is system's going to be finished, that's unlikely that anybody would commit to leasing or buying a piece of property at this point in time. So they have nobody on the hook at this point. It's just general uses that would be allowed. And you could just assume that it would be stuff that would be similar to locations at other intersections of Kellogg and section line roads.
But you do have a list of what's not allowed, so.
Okay, and then as far as this emergency access road, so are we to understand that there won't be through traffic? If I can explain, 143rd Street in the morning, because of the schools that have been built and 127th no longer having access to 54, is really bad. I live, right off of 143rd, the second turnoff, and sometimes it takes me 20 minutes to turn left on Kellogg. So my concern is if we're open to through traffic, all the people that are in Country Hollow and the 127th neighborhoods are going to cut through. There were residents of some of those Country Hollow neighborhoods at one of the DAB meetings that I was present at that really wanted it opened up specifically so they could cut through our neighborhood. And for us, that's somewhat problematic. Traffic's going to become worse. So is this going to be an access point for this entire neighborhood, or is it just temporary?
I'll allow him to answer that in rebuttal. Thank you. Any other comments? We'll have a minute left.
Okay. Will 127th open? But I think he clarified that 127th access to Zelta would open before any of these properties are finalized. Is that correct understanding?
The connection from 127th going west to Kellogg or coming back the other direction is not scheduled to be completed till 2021. So that's all I can say at this point.
Thank you, Dale.
That's all I really had.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker, please.
So, like the last speaker, we're over here in
please give your name and address.
I'm sorry, Travis Cavassi, Clear Creek Circle. Right over here, back to my house is.
Actually, just use the
pointer
mouse. Yeah.
Okay. So, something I haven't heard. I also do not want this street to go through. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, especially now that there will be access through from 127th to get on both.
Please speak in the microphone.
Kellogg. I'm sorry. Both east and westbound Kellogg would be accessible via what they have planned here. But the other thing is, will that wall that has been proposed along this line here, will that also be extended up this direction as well?
Okay, I'll allow him to answer that in the rebuttal. Please make a note of that, Brian.
Cannot.
I think that's all I've got.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
My name is David O'Coin. I live at 14025 East Gilbert Street.
Thank you.
Which is, I don't know where the mouse is. There we go. I am just off to the right, just east of where the map ends. I just recently purchased that property in February, and it's more of an aesthetics, excuse me. Opening up Gilbert for the convenience of the other neighborhood is only considering the other neighborhood. Making that a throughway is taking into a developed, established neighborhood that has no sidewalks and no streetlights. Those two items alone creating a thoroughfare on a street that is not a thoroughfare. Gilbert dead ends. It's a cul-de-sac, so they have to come down Gilbert. They have to hit the stop sign. They've got to turn left or right to exit out of our neighborhood anyways. We have several older residents, and we have several younger residents with children. We do not have the sidewalks for those children to ride their bikes. We do not have the sidewalks for any residents to walk their dogs, to take their evening walks, which there are multiple people, myself included, and my family, and I have a 6-year-old grandson that lives with me. All of that taking into mind, they're wanting to open up Gilbert Street for this residential area here and completing all this for a residential area that has had very, very limited sales. I understand with the housing industry that happened in 2008 because I worked in that industry at that time. You're wanting to open up a street that's not going to be doing anything other than allowing people to zip back and forth in between developments. And personally, and from several of the neighbors that live on there, unfortunately couldn't be here today for illness reasons, it's a huge safety concern. The streets, the Gilbert Street itself is not in the best condition as itself, as there's been many repairs and not many resurfacings. So my main thing is it's a safety issue, and I don't think we should open up that Gilbert Avenue since it is not a through street. Thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you. Dale?
What I advised the district advisory board meeting was that Gilbert is already platted. It's already been dedicated and accepted. That really, whether that street is completed or not, really has nothing to do with the current application. So in putting my semi-lawyer's hat on, trying to keep myself out of the witness chair, that if you decide to recommend denial, I would suggest that you do not use whether that street goes through or not as one of your reasons, because it's already there and it takes a separate vacation action to get rid of it. And since they have completely blocked off access to it except for emergency only, in my opinion, that has really nothing to do with this application. And I'll let Jeff, if he has a different comment on it.
Okay, next speaker. No, sir, your time is up.
I can't rebut what he had to say.
No. Someone else can speak to it.
Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Dodds, and I live at 14225 East Gilbert Circle. We moved into the addition probably about 5 years ago. At that time, we were also not made aware, of any sort of expansion when it came to commercial property. So I'm also over here. The through street will also affect the safety of my child, is why I'm here. As my neighbor clarified, there is no good points of access to and from our neighborhood that doesn't cause either a safety concern or traffic. They have built Christina McAuliffe School to the south on 143rd. With that, we do have lots of traffic, and this will just cause a larger backup due to the traffic flow of not being able to have the infrastructure within the city. So I'm here to go ahead and give my opinion that I'm kind of opposed to this through street. With that said, even more so, he was saying in regards to the commercial property. So if the through street is implemented, then the actual commercial property obviously will cause even more flow depending on what type of structure goes in. Thank you for your time.
Is there anyone on the commission that would like to ask a question to the previous gentleman? Okay, next speaker, please. Anybody else like to speak? Okay. I feel like I want to ask him a question. Sir, can you go back up? Yep. What was your opinion about the through street?
It's a huge safety concern.
Okay.
And as the gentleman pointed out, that it's originally platted.
Right.
Everything that's on this screen was originally platted at one time, and everything on that screen was changed.
Thank you.
So just because it was originally platted doesn't mean we can't change it. And that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, rebuttal by the applicant.
Kevin Mullen, Ritchie Development, we're the applicant. Just a couple quick points. There, as to clarify what Brian was saying and Dale's mentioned, there is no access off of Gilbert Street for the commercial except for the emergency access on the east side. The question about whether there's a wall that's going to go up the east side, there's going to be a fence which was discussed with one of your homeowners in our private meeting that we had. So basically, we've enclosed the entire commercial property with either a wall, a wood fence, or a wrought iron fence. And as Brian has showed you, and some of you have been on the Planning Commission before when we come before with this case, in the 40 years that Jack, Ritchie, and I have been doing this is probably the most complicated piece of property we've ever owned. We didn't start out to have the highway come to us. We worked very hard with Ken Bankston and MKC at the time to figure out how to get back to Kellogg. We had no idea what the Kellogg plans were. We sold ground to the city in 2010 because they had a plan of what everything was going to look like. It changed. We had a very contentious period with KTA. They showed, I mean, the drawings were never the same until the very end. And then once you get KTA decided, then you have Westar come along. I'm not sure if there's anybody else out there that wants a piece of this property, but what we'd like to do now is go ahead and get this property zoned. We understand the concerns of Gilbert going through. When we did this back in 2005, that's just good planning. But as I told the DAB people when we were at the DAB meeting the second time, we don't care. If they want to take Gilbert and make it into a cul-de-sac and the city would buy off on it, that's fine with us. I stand for any questions.
Questions? Mr. Richardson.
Mr. Mullen, I would be hopeful, and I assume you will explore it, to be able to have access off of that one-way frontage road at some point in the future from the highway department, and that would certainly mean that's where most of the traffic would come from if you're fortunate enough to be able to get access from that frontage road.
When we were working with KTA, they took the ground with complete access control. However, at some point, the highway is going to come back into the hands of the city of Wichita. And we hope once KTA goes away, and KTA is involved in this project at this point because they're funding this phase of Kellogg. We hope that when KTA goes away, we can come back to the planning department and sit down and talk about access points off of the frontage road, which would alleviate a lot of the traffic concerns that everybody's talking about. I mean, that's our dream of dreams, but at this point, I can't stand up here and say that that's going to happen.
Yeah, I understand that. But that's what we use frontage roads throughout the city for, is access to commercial property so they don't have to go through neighborhoods. So hopefully that'll happen at some point.
Right, we hope so too.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the commission. Thank you, Mr. Mullen. Mr. Warren.
Based on the meetings that the applicants have had with the district advisory boards, 7-1 vote there, and a long list of prohibited items that the applicant has agreed to.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Warren, seconded by Mr. McKay. Any other discussion?
I'd just like to say I think the applicant has worked well with the neighbors, and I agree with everything that Chuck said. I think I'm in agreement with it, approval.
Thank you for your comment. Any other questions? Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, passed 11-0. Thank you.
Wall on the east side was
Out of order.
Yeah, I believe, just for the record, I believe he said that it would probably be a fence on the east side, but it would all be enclosed. Okay.
Talk to the developer afterwards.
No, please. Mr. Green, you want to say something?
Yeah, just to respond to that, and this is not a plat, a request for a plat. This is just a request for zoning. And at the platting, at the time that the subdivision meeting, or the subdivision committee meets with the developers to decide what happens with the plat, that would be a good time to have that discussion with the wall versus a fence.
It'd be discussion only, and you really have no leverage at that point.
Right, it's just, you could bring your discussion point up at that point.
I'd like to make a point of motion. I think the gentleman's out of order, and this is inappropriate at the point in time.
Okay. Next item is case number, there's no case number, it's a.
Agenda. This.
Unpublic agenda.
No.
The calendar, do we have it? Have it. Yeah, I laid it on my desk. Okay, did anybody see anything they would like to request a change on the calendar? Mr. Warren?
A question, it's not so much the change, and I marked it on another copy, and then I didn't bring that copy. There was a meeting, July, no?
If you're thinking about the
July-
July 5th, we moved it.
Okay,
Yeah.
that was the one that was, okay, real good, yeah. I just didn't know if there'd be a quorum on July 5th, that close to the 4th of July, if we'd have enough people show up for that one. But that one did, okay.
It's been moved to the 12th. Mr. McKay?
My only point is, advanced plans, we've changed meeting times, what, twice in the last 6 months? Is that going to be on here too?
We'll have one, yeah. My understanding was Mr. Daly had proposed a different day or time or
It
something.
changes every time we have a meeting.
And so we were waiting for that to be sorted out, but we'll get it on there.
Yeah,
Okay.
we really haven't discussed it. We did.
Have to prove it.
Well, I thought at the last advanced plans meeting, we said that we were going to meet on the first Tuesday of the first Tuesday of the meeting, or Thursday, I mean. In other words, the first monthly.
We didn't decide that. It was mentioned that that's what the staff recommended, and we did not discuss.
Cindy was going to bring that up next meeting. Okay. Can we have consensus that we approve this?
Yes.
Anybody? Okay, we're adjourned.
Move to approve.
Second.
Nope, just consensus. We're fine with consensus.